Hey everyone. So today we're diving into a document that makes a pretty extraordinary claim, and it's aimed at a surprising target, your local public library. The author issues this really urgent warning, and we're going to break down exactly what's going on here.
I mean, that's a pretty bold premise, right? But the document we're looking at today goes even further. It's not just saying, hey, this proof exists. It's arguing that for libraries, getting their hands on this book is literally a matter of institutional survival. A defense against a crisis the author claims is already happening.
So that's what we're doing today. We're going to walk through this whole argument piece by piece. We'll look at the claims the author makes, the evidence they bring to the table, and this really urgent call to action that's right at the center of it all.
Okay, so first things first. The argument kicks off by painting this really dire picture of a crisis. The author literally calls it a perfect storm, and claims it's this coordinated attack on knowledge that's happening as we speak. So where's the evidence? Well, the first piece is all about the money. The author points to the Institute of Museum and Library Services, the IMLS, a huge federal funding source. And the claim here is that over $160 million in its grants just got terminated right in the middle of the year, basically pulling the rug out from under libraries all over the country. And then there's the second part of this so-called storm, censorship. According to the document, we're talking about a massive number here. The author cites a figure from PEN America, claiming that over 6,800 book bans have happened in 2025 alone. That's a huge number, creating what they describe as a climate of intellectual restriction. But here's where it gets really interesting. The author connects these dots. The document argues these federal cuts aren't just a blunt instrument. They are a genuine lifeline being severed for the most vulnerable institutions. We're talking about the 77% of U.S. libraries that are small or in rural areas. So the document then takes it a step further. It links that financial squeeze to what it frames as a theocratic agenda. And it points to what it sees as a pattern of specific actions. Things like mandating the 10 Commandments in classrooms, bringing Bible study into public schools, and even alleging that state funds are being used for politically endorsed Bibles.
And wow, this slide really shows how the author tries to frame all this. They're putting current events into this much broader and, let's be honest, very provocative historical context. The document makes a direct line, drawing parallels between today's book bans and the kind of state-sponsored destruction of knowledge you saw in authoritarian regimes back in the 20th century.
So the takeaway from all this, according to the source, is that this isn't just a series of random events. No, it's laid out as a 4-step playbook. Step 1, starve the institutions of knowledge. Step 2, get rid of the materials they see as dangerous. Step 3, replace them with their own ideological materials. And finally, Step 4, declare victory. That's the crisis, as the author presents it. All right, so after laying out this whole crisis scenario, the document makes a huge pivot. It starts to present what it calls the antidote. And that antidote is a very specific 4-book series that is really the whole point of this author's argument. And there it is. That's the title of the series. The author, Senad isn't just claiming this is another book about atheism. Not at all. He's claiming his work is the very first to offer actual, valid, definitive evidence. And to really hammer this point home, the document draws this super sharp line in the sand. You've got famous atheist writers like Dawkins and Hitchens on one side arguing from probability, that God likely doesn't exist. But on the other side, you have this author who claims his work proves with absolute certainty that God cannot exist. That's a huge difference.
Okay, so you're probably wondering, what is this definitive proof? Well, let's break it down. The first pillar is scientific. The author points to the first law of thermodynamics, the idea that energy can't be created or destroyed. The argument is that this law makes a creator God who brings a universe out of nothing a physical impossibility. It's not just unlikely, the author says, it's a direct violation of natural law.
All right, proof number 2 is all about logic. The argument goes something like this. You've got thousands of different religions, and each one claims to have the one and only one true God. Well, logically, they can't all be right since they're mutually exclusive. So the very concept from this viewpoint becomes a paradox. The third proof gets a little more philosophical. It's called ontological, and it really goes after the whole idea of creation from nothing.
The author's point is, for creation to happen from nothing, absolute nothing would have to exist first. But the very concept of absolute nothing having any properties at all, like the potential to create something, is, in the author's view, just completely incoherent.
And then we get to the fourth and final proof, and this one is by far the most unconventional. The author claims it's based on decades of personal experience, documented contact, they say, with something called a karmic organization, all happening through advanced lucid dreaming. And this entity supposedly revealed that all of religion was intentionally created as a system to control humanity.
Okay, now hang on, because this next part is absolutely crucial to the author's entire argument. The claim isn't just that this work is different, it's that it's fundamentally unique in all of human history, specifically because of where it comes from.
So, to get what he's saying, you have to understand this idea he calls the karmic matrix. He basically describes it as a kind of simulation, a pre-programmed narrative that controls all of humanity. And the really important part is, he argues that every other book ever written, doesn't matter if it's the Bible or Richard Dawkins, was written inside the system. And that leads us to the central claim. The author states that his work is the very first thing ever written entirely outside of that karmic programming. It offers, in his words, a genuine out-of-the-box perspective. And in his view, that's what makes it so uniquely valuable. So to back up his critique of what he calls this programmed, faith-based way of thinking, the author pulls out this quote from a pastor. He uses it as a prime example of a mindset that's willing to accept something that goes against observable reality, simply because an authority figure says so.
And then he follows that up with a much older quote, this one from Ignatius of Loyola. The author uses this to make the point that this kind of thinking isn't new at all. It's part of a long historical tradition that, he argues, demands people put their obedience to an institution above their own perception of reality. So you've got the crisis, you've got the four proofs, you've got this unique justification, and it's all building up to one final point, a very urgent call to action that comes with a very specific deadline. And that urgency is all tied to the budget cycle. The author is basically saying that libraries need to use their current 2025 funds before September 30th. Why? Because the document claims that after that date, any future funding for buying new books is in serious, serious jeopardy.
And so this is how the document wraps up with these really clear side-by-side instructions. On one side, it's telling librarians, order this 4-book series right now. Use what's left of your 2025 funds before they're gone. And on the other side, it's telling everyday readers, go to your local library and formally request these books, and make sure you mention the budget crisis to create a sense of urgency.
The author calls his books intellectual survival tools, and that really leaves us with a big question to think about. Regardless of what you think about the author's proofs or the politics involved, what does an argument like this, one that weaves together budget cuts, book bans, and a claim of definitive proof, tell us about the intense pressures our public institutions are under today and this larger battle over information itself?